vast wilderness separates east and west. Veterans become railwaymen, cowboys, settlers. Conquering nature, they'll unite the continent. Their mission, to tame the Wild West.
The term westward expansion encompasses the acquisition of territories by the United States across the whole area of North American continent, from the Atlantic Ocean in the east to the Pacific Ocean in the west. The westward expansion was enabled by buying land, wars, treaties, and the displacement of Native American Indians. To travel to the west, many had to make adjustments to their means of transportation. This meant having to purchase and maintain oxen and wagons and hand carts. Be it climate, starvation, dehydration, illness, or simply old age, many would die along the trek west on the Oregon Trail. Let's take a listen to the Trail of Tears.
About the Trail of Tears. Okay, when you look at history, we can always learn from our success and mistakes. Right now, I want to talk to you about a time in history where the Native American people did not have it so good. This was caused by laws that were made to force them out of their native lands to parts of the country that was not known to them. People from the Cherokee, Muskogee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole tribes were marched at gunpoint hundreds of miles to a reservation that they knew nothing about the land in what is today modern Oklahoma. This all began in the year of 1830. Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, and this forced the Native Americans to leave their homelands and move to the Indian reservations. Now, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, why did they leave? Well, back then, there were many who thought they did not have a choice, and there were others who wanted to stay and fight. But if they stayed, they knew they did not have the army to stop the United States of America government. Now, the Cherokees did stand up, saying they did not want to move, but that is when President Andrew Jackson stepped in to work out a deal with them, giving them land in Oklahoma and $5 million for leaving their native land. Some of the Cherokees still did not want to go and asked Congress to help them, but Congress said no way and told them they had to leave. This is where some did agree to go, but others refused and stayed in their homeland. When President Jackson found out, he acted by sending General Winfield Scott to make the Cherokee move, even though they didn't want to. So listening to his orders, General Winfield Scott and his army went to the homeland of the Native Americans and forced them all to move. Those that resisted, he put them in what we call today jail, but back then was called a stockade. After General Winfield Scott gained control with his army, he forced the Native Americans to march as far as 1,000 miles from what some historians say. The path that the Native Americans were forced to march was very dangerous, and the reason this path is called the Trail of Tears is because many Native Americans died making the trip due to starvation, disease, and other poor conditions. So when you think back on history and treating people fairly, this is definitely something that comes up and is very mean toward the Native American people, and we can learn from to never treat others bad again, and that was the Trail of Tears.
The settlers believed that they deserved this land. They wanted the land that the Native Americans occupied. They saw the Native Americans as unfamiliar or alien people who occupied the land that they felt they wanted and they deserved. So in order to obtain this land, they had to drive the Native Americans out. So the Native Americans were greatly affected by this westward movement. Wars, bloody wars, displacement, disease, terror was inflicted on the Native Americans during this westward movement. By 1840, tens of thousands of Native Americans had been driven off their land in the southeastern states and forced to move across the Mississippi to Indian Territory. The federal government promised that their new land would remain unmolested forever. But as the line of white settlement pushed westward, Indian country shrank and shrank. By 1907, Oklahoma became a state and Indian territory was gone for good.